Her voice cut through the air before I even made it past the doorway. She thinks she belongs here just because she shares our last name. I stopped in my tracks, gripping the handle of my worn leather bag a little tighter. The dining room was polished, glowing under the golden chandelier, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Everything sparkled, except me. I didn't just glance, they stared. A mix of confusion, judgment, and worst of all, amusement. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My mother didn't look at me when she spoke. Her wine glass danced between her fingers, and her lips were curled in that smug little smile she always wore when she wanted to put me back in my place. I hadn't even spoken yet. The air in the room shifted. Anna, my grandfather's deep voice boomed from the far end of the long oak table. Conversations halted. Forks dropped midair. Even the children fell silent. Everyone turned to him. Grandpa Robert slowly stood up, steadying himself with his cane. The wood knocked against the marble floor as he walked toward me, each step echoing with tension. My mother tensed, her jaw clenching. My cousin Bradley whispered something to his sister and chuckled. Aunt Meredith leaned forward, clearly enjoying the show. I didn't blink. Then, he reached into the inside of his navy blazer, pulled out a crisp white envelope, and held it toward me. His hands, though weathered and aged, were firm. She's the only one, he said calmly, who deserves anything in this family. The room shattered. Gasps. A plate clattered. My uncle nearly knocked over his champagne. I stared at the letter, stunned, feeling 100 different things at once. I hadn't come here expecting drama. I didn't even want to be here. I came out of respect because despite everything, this was still the family I was born into. And they hated that. My mother stood up, so fast her chair screeched backward. Dad, what the hell are you talking about? She snapped, her voice slicing through the tension. That girl hasn't even been around for years. She shows up, once every couple of Christmases? And now you're, handing her some inheritance letter, like she's your chosen one. Her voice cracked at the end, betraying the fear beneath her anger. I gave up everything to take care of this family, this house, this name, she continued, stepping around the table. Grandpa didn't flinch. You took care of your own ambition. That's different. I still hadn't moved. I could feel my own heart pounding in my throat, but I kept my face neutral. I wouldn't cry here. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Open it, he said to me gently. My fingers trembled just slightly as I slid the letter out. It wasn't inheritance papers. It was a confession. A truth I didn't even know I was walking into. And when I read the first line, to my granddaughter Abigail, the only person who never asked me for anything, my vision blurred for a second. Because this letter wasn't just about money. It was about a decision made years ago. A legacy he'd been watching fall into the wrong hands. And now he was rewriting it right in front of them all. My mother stepped forward again. You're doing this to spite me. No, Grandpa said. I'm doing this to save what's left of our name. I finally found my voice.
Calm. Clear.
You never asked me to stay, I said, my eyes meeting hers. You only ever asked me to disappear. She scoffed. Because you didn't fit the part. You mean I didn't fake it well enough? The silence was deafening. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the one they feared, the one who remembered too much, the one who refused to play by their script. I folded the letter carefully and looked back at my grandfather. Thank you. He smiled at me, that rare soft smile I hadn't seen since I was a kid. It's time they learn what loyalty looks like. I walked past my mother and took a seat at the table. Not at the far end. At the head. No one said a word, but their eyes said everything. They weren't laughing anymore. The silence in the room was a living thing. As I sat at the head of the table, the seat my grandfather had just vacated, I could feel every stare digging into my skin like needles. Years of polite hostility from this family had turned into something colder. This wasn't just tension. It was war. My mother still hadn't sat down. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the back of her chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I won't sit through this circus," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else, and turned to leave. "Anna," Grandpa said quietly, but the weight of his voice stopped her mid-step. "Sit." She slowly turned her head toward him. "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone? I think you've done enough of that to yourself." I didn't look at her. I wouldn't let her see the flicker of pain that always tried to sneak in when she talked down to me like I was nothing. That was the thing about emotional bruises. They never showed up on the surface, but they left permanent scars. Bradley scoffed from his end of the table. "What is this, some kind of family reality show twist?" His sister Chloe laughed under her breath.
Yeah.
"The lost daughter returns." "Enough," Grandpa's voice thundered. It was the first time in my life I'd heard him raise his voice like that. Even the chandeliers seemed to quiver. A few of the younger cousins flinched. He looked around the room with a glare that could cut through bone. "This girl sat in hospital waiting rooms alone when none of you came. She worked nights while you all drank champagne, and not once did she ever call me to ask for a dime." His voice dropped, quieter, colder. "Can any of you say the same?" I glanced at him, trying to understand why now. Why this moment, after all this time? But then I remembered what he told me once. Some people only wake up when the fire reaches their own feet. This was his fire. "This isn't about money," I said finally, breaking the silence. "It's about respect. And I'm not here to take anything from any of you. I just came to pay my respects because despite everything, I still thought I belonged somewhere in this family." My mother gave a short, bitter laugh. "You don't belong, Abigail. You never did. You were the mistake your father left behind." Her words hit hard, but not as hard as they used to. I stood up. "I may have been a mistake to you," I said, my voice shaking just slightly, but to him, I was the only thing he ever got right. She froze. My mother had built her entire narrative on rewriting the past, on silencing the pieces that didn't match her curated image. My existence disrupted her storyline, and now I was standing in it with the truth. "I didn't ask for this letter," I continued. "I didn't know Grandpa was going to do this. But maybe deep down, you always feared that someday the things you buried would dig themselves out." She stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You think this makes you better than us? You live in a one-bedroom apartment and drive a car that sounds like a dying lawnmower. And yet somehow," I smiled, "I sleep better than all of you."
Gasps.
Again. This family worshipped appearance. Reputation. Not truth. Not love. Just the image of it all. And I was shattering it, piece by piece. My grandfather cleared his throat. "Since we're all gathered here," he glanced at the letter I was still holding, "I suppose I should make a few things clear." He pulled out a second letter. The real one this time. His will. Every head turned. Chairs creaked. Forks clinked. Everyone leaned forward like they could will the ink off the page. "Before I read this," he said slowly, "I want each of you to remember something. Money doesn't make you family. Kindness does. Loyalty does. And none of you showed that to Abigail." I could almost see the panic rise in their throats. But what he said next was the crack of thunder that split the storm wide open. "Everything I own, my properties, my land, the company shares, the trust fund, is going to her." You could hear the sound of hearts dropping. Someone gasped. Aunt Meredith actually choked on her drink. I didn't react. I couldn't. I was still frozen. My mother's face twisted. "You can't do that. You're not in your right mind." "I've never been clearer," he said, sliding the will onto the center of the table. "But you promised," she started. "I promised I'd take care of the one who took care of me." The room erupted. Bradley stood up, shouting something about manipulation. Chloe cried that it was unfair. Meredith started whisper yelling about legal challenges. I just stood there, still, quiet. And then my grandfather whispered to me, "You don't owe them anything anymore." And for the first time in years, I believed that. The shouting echoed behind me, but I didn't turn back. I walked through the long hallway, portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls, watching like silent judges. I used to walk through this house as a child, head down, invisible. Now I walked like I owned the floor beneath my feet. Because I did. And that terrified them. The moment I stepped into the library, I shut the heavy double doors behind me. The noise dulled, but I could still hear the rise and fall of voices, some frantic, some bitter. All of them scared. I stared at my reflection in the antique glass cabinet. My reflection stared back, a woman in her late 20s with tired eyes and a jaw clenched too tight. My dress wasn't expensive, but it was clean. My hair wasn't professionally done, but it was pulled back with care. I didn't look like them, but I never wanted to. The door creaked behind me. I turned sharply.
It was Grandpa.
He stepped in, slower now, leaning heavier on his cane. "Thought you might need a moment," he said. I swallowed hard. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said, lowering himself into the leather armchair by the fireplace. "You think I haven't watched this family rot from the inside out?" I leaned against the desk, folding my arms. "They'll challenge it. The will." He chuckled dryly. "Let them. I've got 1,000 pages of documentation backing every word. Lawyers, recordings, even a psychiatric evaluation to prove my mental clarity. I was thorough for a reason." I shook my head slowly, still stunned. "You've planned this. For years." I looked at him. "Why me?" His eyes met mine, and for the first time in forever, they weren't stern or distant. They were soft, regretful. "Because you were the only one who never pretended," he said. "The only one who didn't take. You came around not to gain, but to give. Even when they mocked you. Even when your own mother shut you out." I hesitated, then sat across from him. "She'll never forgive this." "She never forgave your father for loving you more than her," he replied. "That's not your burden." The words made my throat tighten. "You know, she told people I was a rebellious mistake. That I didn't belong in this bloodline." He nodded slowly. "And maybe I was a coward for letting that lie grow." I looked at him, startled. "You weren't a coward." He gave a bitter smile. "I didn't speak up when I should have. I let her twist your story. Let her pretend you were just some forgotten side character in our family. But not anymore." There was a pause. He reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a small wooden box. "What is that?" I asked. He slid it to me. "Open it." Inside was a thin stack of old letters, all addressed to me. From him. My hands trembled as I picked one up and unfolded it. The ink had faded, but the words were unmistakably his. "Dear Abigail, I'm sorry I didn't come to your graduation. Your mother told me you didn't want me there. I hope someday I can explain why I wasn't braver." Letter after letter. Apologies. Regret. Quiet attempts to reach me. I looked up, stunned. "She never gave me these." He nodded. I figured. She lied to both of us. His voice was almost a whisper. She lied to everyone. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it all sitting between us like a ghost. Finally, I asked, "What happens now?" He looked at me firmly. "Now you take your place. You don't owe them affection, but you do owe yourself peace. They'll scream, they'll threaten, but they won't win." I breathed in slowly. The truth stung, but it also set something free. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I know," he said, "but you do deserve justice." And somehow, that difference mattered. Back in the dining room, my mother was pacing. The others had fallen into quiet, stunned murmurs, like soldiers after a sudden surrender. Bradley was furiously typing on his phone. Aunt Meredith was gulping her third glass of wine. Then the doors opened, and I walked back in. Everyone turned. "You're not welcome here anymore," my mother snapped, her voice cracking. "You've always been the outsider." I didn't flinch. "You mean I didn't play along?" She stepped forward. "You think money makes you one of us?" "No," I said, steady. "But dignity does." Her lip curled. "You're nothing but a charity case with a new title." I smiled coldly. "And you're the woman who let her own daughter starve while she drank from crystal."
Gasps again.
I wasn't holding back anymore. I turned to Grandpa. "If you want me to take this legacy, I'll do it. but I'm going to clean house. This family has been alive for too long. His smile was slow and proud. Do what they never had the guts to. The next morning, the estate was different. It was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The kind where everyone was whispering behind doors, packing intentions into silence, waiting for me to slip. I walked into the sunroom holding a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, the way I drank it when I worked 2 jobs and slept 4 hours a night. Across the room, Aunt Meredith was on the phone, her voice low but sharp. She's bluffing. Abigail doesn't know how to handle a trust like this. She's never run anything. She's not one of us. She noticed me and froze mid-sentence. I raised an eyebrow. Go on. Don't let me interrupt. She hung up instantly. Morning, I said, walking past her. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She spat. I stopped. No, I replied. But I've learned to stand where I used to shrink. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe the problem isn't me. She scoffed and left. Down the hall, I found Grandpa sitting in the study again, dressed in a clean button-down and slacks, signing documents with slow precision. They'll come after you, he said, not looking up. They already are, I said. I just walked in on Meredith trying to convince someone I'm incompetent. He chuckled. That's mild compared to what's next. I took a seat. Good. Let them try. I'm not backing down. He looked up, eyes calm. That's why I chose you. Just then, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Abigail Johnson? A woman's voice.
Polished.
Cold. Yes. This is Margaret Blaine, counsel for Anna Clark. We've been made aware of a sudden change in Mr. Robert Johnson's estate. You'll be receiving a formal challenge to the will. I hung up. Grandpa raised an eyebrow. They're suing. He sighed. They'll lose. I leaned forward. I want to fight this the right way. Not just legally. I want to show them what this family could have been if it had a soul. He watched me for a long moment, then start with the staff. That night, I invited the estate workers, the gardeners, cooks, drivers to the living room. No suits. No legalese. Just me, face to face. You've kept this house alive, I told them. My name might be on the papers now, but this place, its heartbeat is yours. Silence. Then the head cook nodded, quietly. We always hoped someone like you would come back. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. The next day, I found my mother standing by the rose garden. She didn't look up as I approached. You're ruining everything, she said flatly. I'm restoring it. She turned sharply. You think I wanted to be this cold? I had to be. You don't survive in this family by being soft. I studied her face. Beneath the anger, I saw something else. Guilt? Regret? Fear? Maybe all of it. You made your choices, I said. And I'm making mine. She laughed bitterly. He should have left it all to Bradley. Bradley doesn't even know how to spell responsibility, I replied. She flinched but didn't deny it. You were a child, she said after a moment. I should have protected you. I looked at her. But instead you used me as a shadow to hide your mistakes. No response. I'm not angry anymore, I added. But I am done. I turned to leave. Abigail. I paused. If I said I was sorry, I didn't let her finish.
You don't have to say it. You have to show it.
And I don't think you can. I left her standing there. Not broken but exposed. 3 weeks passed. And not a single day was quiet. Lawsuits arrived, just like Grandpa predicted. Vicious emails from Bradley. Voicemails filled with threats from aunts and uncles who used to ignore my birthday. But I didn't break. I attended every hearing. Read every paper. Responded with facts, not fury. They thought I'd collapse. Instead, I rebuilt. The estate staff stood by me. Grandpa, too, never missed a meeting. He walked slower now, sometimes forgot things, but when it counted, his voice was steel. Blood makes you related, he told the courtroom on day 3, but actions decide who deserves to carry the name. And the court listened. The judge ruled in our favor. The will stood. The day the ruling came in, I stood in the marble entryway, the very place my mother rolled her eyes at me weeks ago, and just stared at the door. I had come here as an outsider. Now, I wasn't just inside. I was in charge. That evening, I hosted a dinner. Not the usual kind, no crystal, no pretentious six-course meals.
Just people. People who mattered.
The cook's daughter. The gardener's teenage son. The quiet old driver who'd worked for this family for 40 years and no one even knew his birthday.
We laughed.
We ate. We healed. Grandpa made a toast. To the girl who reminded this house what love looks like. I blinked back tears. Then I stood holding my glass. This home, I said slowly, was built on fear, on status, on image. But that ends now. This house will be a shelter, not a showcase. For the people who were never seen, never thanked, never told they mattered. The applause was quiet, but genuine. And I felt it.
The shift.
Weeks later, I walked into the sitting room. My mother was there, again, without an invitation. She looked smaller somehow. Came to see what it feels like. I asked. No, she said. Came to say, thank you. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For not turning into me. That one hit different. She looked tired. Maybe for the first time in her life, honest. I don't expect forgiveness, she added. I just wanted to say it out loud. I nodded. I don't hate you, Mom. I just don't need you anymore. She nodded back, eyes glassy. And then she left. For good. A month passed. Then 2. The estate changed. We opened part of the property to a local youth program. Grandpas and used guest houses turned into shelters for young women aging out of foster care. We gave jobs. We gave chances. We gave something this house never did before, hope. And one morning, as I sat on the back porch with Grandpa, sipping coffee under the rising sun, he reached over and touched my hand. You did it, he whispered. I smiled.
No.
We did it. He nodded, but I could tell he was tired, the kind of tired that doesn't go away with rest. He passed 2 weeks later, peacefully, holding the same photo of my father he always kept tucked in his bedside drawer. At the funeral, they all came, even the ones who'd sued me, but they stayed silent, because they knew now. This house wasn't theirs anymore, and it never really was. It belonged to the one person they tried hardest to keep out, the girl who carried the name without pride, but gave it meaning.
Me.
Abigail Johnson.